6C, rational exponents. So when we have roots, okay, so let's say like the square root of x, that can be rewritten as a fraction power. So the square root is x to the 1/2 power. So we're going to look at that because it lets us do some operations that we previously couldn't do. Okay, so here's the form. Whatever the index is, that goes on the bottom of the fractions. That's the denominator, and then any power that you might have would be the numerator. Okay, so if we're going to rewrite 216 as a radical 1 to the 1/3 power, that means it is the cube root of 216. Okay, and if you put that in your calculator, the cube root of 216 is 6. All right, here we have 7 to the 1/2 times 7 to the 1/2. All right, the 1/2 is as a root is 7, or is square root. So square root of 7 times square root of 7, that is 7. Okay, here we have 5 to the 1/4 times 125 to the 1/4. Okay, those bases are not the same, so we can't multiply them, but if we change them to roots, we can. So it is the 4th root of 5 times the 4th root of 125. And now because these have the same index, I can multiply them. 5 times 125 is 625. So I have the 4th root of 625. If you put that in your calculator to simplify it, that is 5. Okay, so practice converting back and forth. X to the 3/7, that would be the 7th root, whatever is the denominator is your index, of x to the 3rd power. All right, the square root of a to the 5th, that would be a to the 5/2. The index for square root is 2. Okay, this is a review of properties of exponents or exponent rules from Algebra 1. All right, so hopefully these things will look familiar to you. If you are multiplying things with the same bases, you add the exponents. So 8 to the 1/3 times 8 to the 2/3, that would be 8 to the 3/3. 3 over 3 is 1, and 8 to the 1st power is 8. So I add the exponents when I am multiplying the numbers. This one says that if I have something in parentheses raised to a power, then both things in those parentheses have to be raised to that power. So here I have 4 times 5 in parentheses to the 1/2. That is 4 to the 1/2 times 5 to the 1/2. And where people tend to mess this up is if we had something like this, like 4x to the 3rd power. People say that this is equal to 4x to the 3rd. That's not true. Both of these things need that exponent. So it would be 4 to the 3rd times x to the 3rd. All right, and 4 to the 3rd power would be 64. So this is 64x cubed. Both things in the parentheses get the exponent. All right. When you're dividing things, the rule is that you subtract the exponents. So I have 7 to the 3/2 over 7 to the 1/2. That is 7 to the 1st power, or just 7. 3/2 minus 1/2 is 1. Okay, here we have the power to a power rule. So anytime I have something, an exponent raised to another power, I'm going to multiply those two powers together. So 5 to the 1/2 to the 4th power, I'm going to do 1/2 times 4. That would be 2. So this is 5 squared, or 25. Okay, when we have negative exponents, the way that we get rid of that negative exponent, because all your simplified answers cannot have negative exponents in your final answer. So the way that we get rid of that is by moving it to the denominator of the fraction. So if I have 9 to the negative 1/2, that is 1 over 9 to the 1/2. We could simplify this further and say that's 1 over the square root of 9, which is 1/3. Okay, and then this rule is kind of the same. It's a variation of rule number 3. So we have things in parentheses being raised to a power. Make sure that you give that exponent to both of those things, even though they're being divided inside the parentheses. So 5 to the 1/2 over 16 to the 1/2 is 5 to the 1/2 over 16 to the 1/2. All right, so we put those things together to simplify. I have the 4th root of x to the 3rd over the 8th root of x squared. So I'm going to change these to rational exponents. So x to the 3/4 over x to the 2/8. That is changing these roots to fractional or rational exponents. All right, 3/4 minus 2/8 would give me x to the 1/2. All right, here I'm going to change these again to rational exponents. So the square root of 3 would be 3 to the 1/2. And I'm multiplying that by the 4th root of 3. So that's 3 to the 1/4. All right, remember our rule is that when the bases are being multiplied, the exponents get added together. All right, so 1/2 plus 1/4 is 3/4. So my final answer here would be 3 to the 3/4 power.